You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Crash Course, Nerd to Know Media's monthly anime book club. With me, we have two wonderful guests. We have Cian and Katie. Say hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Woo! Merry January.
Mer January. Happy Newmas.
What year is it?
It doesn't matter.
It is time.
Nothing matters.
It is time for anime.
It is always time for anime over here on the show. And this time, I cannot be more excited to talk about truly a staple of anime culture as a whole that it's really a shock we haven't covered any of their works this time. This month we are talking about Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke. So, now, of course, like it would be sinful and insane of me to not talk about a Studio Ghibli movie without bringing up their co-founder and director, Mr. Hayao Miyazaki. So,
can we add some like trumpets there?
Just a full big band orchestra because this guy goddamn deserves it. So let's roll the clock on back to talk about this absolute legend of the industry. So Miyazaki was born in the Bunkyo Ward in Tokyo in 1941, getting a start in animation working for Toei Animation, one of the big powerhouses of serialized anime in the country. In 1963, involved to a kind of variety of kind of serialized projects at the time, such as Doggy March and Animal Treasure Planet. A lot of the shows this time were adaptations of kind of classical Western literature. One of his main influences was an animated version of Heidi. And during his time working with Toei, he is where he met his one of his longtime collaborators, Isao Takahata. So after working for Toei for a couple of years, Miyazaki kind of moved between several different studios throughout the early 70s, such as A-Pro, Nippon Animation, eventually landing himself in telecom animation film, which is where he got to direct his first feature-length film, Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, in 1979. And then in the same studio in 1984, producing his first original work with Takahata, Nausicaa Valley of the Wind.
Ooh.
After which, Miyazaki and Takahata broke indie, and founded Studio Ghibli.
Okay, so he's a proper, kind of, working from the ground up type of director. He didn't sort of come through some avenue,
Oh, yeah, no. He made his way. It was, as he said, there's 2 decades of work before he got to found Ghibli. And up until Ghibli, he was just another director. It's difficult then and now in modern circumstance to talk about Miyazaki as not an icon.
Well, what makes him so, I know you probably got, a big plan thing, but what to you makes him so iconic then?
I think, it's hard to say, because as long as I've been alive and consuming work, he's always just kind of been this standout. I think probably one of the reasons, at least kind of from the Western perspective, is because it was his works that were at the forefront of anime before the modern wave of the internet. In the kind of the late 90s, it was mostly a lot of Ghibli's movies that were being sent over here and shown in cinemas. Like the likes of Nausicaa, Castle in the Sky, and Kiki's Delivery Service, and My Neighbor Totoro. These were one of the few anime movies that were actually getting shown here. So in terms of, at least from a Western perspective, he was kind of the only name in anime. And then obviously,
okay, and
with for reasons I'll kind of get into when we start talking about Mononoke, that just shot him up into blockbuster status.
And like, what about you, Katie? Kind of, are you a big Ghibli fan? Like, how much do you kind of bring to the table here in terms of what you've seen and what you haven't?
I wouldn't say I'm a big Ghibli fan. Like, I like Ghibli, obviously. I wouldn't have seen as many movies as, other people who would call themselves big Ghibli fans, but I've seen kind of the major staples. So I've seen like Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of more of not a newbie, like I've been watching them for a few years, but I'd be more kind of novice in that regard.
Yeah, that's I was so surprised when I found out just how many works Ghibli had under their belt that weren't Miyazaki's, actually, went funnily enough, because like his are at the forefront of the studio. Your Totoro's, your Spirited Aways, your Hell's Moving Castles. But when you actually kind of dig into it, there's a lot of kind of just kind of weird experimental stuff behind the surface, and a lot of which was directed by Takahata. Like one famous production was in the studio concurrently being produced.
So like you're kind of guessing at stuff.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you there. I just meant like I was just saying your Pom Pokos and your Arietis, your sort of weird out there ones, like.
Yeah, your creative stuff, like The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which is this beautiful like animated watercolor piece.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. That looked like it was being drawn in real time, like.
Oh, it's stunning. But yeah, like it's as I was saying though, like one really, really famous kind of example of the creative works that were happening in there was that at the same time My Neighbor Totoro was being created, this real whimsical, laid back kind of adventure there was this while Miyazaki was producing that, just down the corridor, Takahata was producing Grave of the Fireflies, which is
oh my God,
one of the most harrowing movies ever made.
I still remember getting it from a library back when that was a thing, and putting it on, thinking it was going to be like a Totoro style Ghibli. I had it on in my living room with like friends, and just it broke my spirit.
Oh, I haven't been able to sit through it. I need to be in the right mindset, and I just haven't. But
see, I had that experience with this movie. So like, am I doomed if I watch Grave of the Fire?
Yeah. No. It's Grave of the Fireflies is the My Neighbor Totoro of suffering. Yeah. This isn't the episode about that, but it's about two kids in World War II, like two little civilians who are just trying not to die.
A tale we can all get behind.
I deeply just
whimsy in shoes.
Cartoons. But of course, as you mentioned, we are not talking about Grave of the Fireflies, not yet, at least. We'll see how next year goes.
We'll save that for the Valentine's Day special.
Oh, geez, that's next month. No, this month we are talking about Miyazaki's seventh directorial work, Princess Mononoke. And I definitely think like it's important to kind of mark just kind of in terms of Miyazaki's works, just what this kind of marked, because a lot of his work before this was very, very light and fantasy and whimsical. I think, as far as I know, the movie he produced just before this was Kiki's Delivery Service. So you have like that.
I was about to ask, You have that,
Sorry, like Totoro and Porco Rosso. All these very kind of like light, whimsical family affairs. And Castle in the Sky, of course. And he decided that he wanted to go bigger before the turn of the millennium in 1997, and decided to just put down pen this epic in scale conflict between industry and the environment.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were kind of still mid-flow. Yeah, well, I mean, like, kind of, I'm not really kind of up to date on what's popular and what isn't. I'm assuming this is among the most popular of the Ghibli still, is it?
I would say so. I would say so, but I think it's I think all of Miyazaki's kind of are, though. I think all of them have a place of prestige. Now, if we want to actually talk in terms of pure number crunch, here's some fascinating little facts for you. So, after this movie released in Japan, it became the highest grossing domestic film in the country, only to be overtaken later that year by Titanic.
Damn, that was the only fact. That was the only fact I knew about this movie, and you said it. I was really proud of that.
But also, like, it netted Miyazaki and Ghibli. Like, as I said, I think this was really the springboard for him becoming, for him hitting iconic status, because this was a film that netted him the Japanese Academy Award for Best Picture, not just Best Animated, for Best Picture.
And it deserves it.
Absolutely. So I suppose we'll get into the movie here. So what is Princess Mononoke actually about? So it follows the story of an Emishi prince called Ashitaka, and for the record, I suppose Emishi. This is the sort of crunch I had to get down to researching when I was doing this. The Emishi, they were a tribal ethnic group in Japan that were it's effectively either wiped out or subsumed by the Japanese Empire in the early 8th century.
Wow.
Miyazaki is pulling just like deep cultural roots already comparatively. So we have an Emishi prince whose village is attacked by a cursed boar, cursing himself in the process. Because the Emishi and his village are very spiritual, he is cast out just of the village entirely, but sent to find either the source of the curse, believing that to be the only way for him to possibly cure his terminal curse, and in doing so ends up finding himself in the middle of a conflict between forest spirits and an industrious iron town.
Okay, I've got to say, you've actually summed up a very complicated movie very well.
Well, I mean, I think Kev even explained it better than the movie did itself. Because, when I was watching it, I was kind of like, okay, he's an Namishi. They haven't explained what that is, and then so for that whole opening section of the movie, they kind of talk about some of their rituals and that in passing, but they talk about it almost as if you're supposed to know what it already is. So, there's parts where the wise woman, I suppose, asks him, if he's ready to go on this journey. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And the whole village, what do you mean he has to cut his hair off? And I was like, nobody mentioned that.
I think as well, like, I think it's to be considered that Miyazaki probably didn't create this for a Western audience. I think it just happened to end up that way. I think like he designed it for a very Japanese audience, who like the culture of cutting your hair, at least in, these kind of older times, was very significant. Especially for he was a prince of the village, so he's very royalty, so that's incredibly significant.
Really? Because the environmental message feels very pointed at a Western audience, wouldn't you think? I mean, I know the environment is everywhere, not just America.
Yeah, it's
but
kind of
like
everywhere.
there's certainly.
It definitely is. I think it's.
I know, but in terms of industry, that's a very westernized thing,
Well, no, I mean it could be quite a Japanese thing as well, because they are quite industrious and they are quite modernized as well.
And like
in the sense of it destroying the environment, though.
Oh, like you have to honestly think about like how. Like I know a little bit about the kind of the Japanese Industrial Revolution, and it was an incredibly swift affair, because. If you don't know, they had their borders, like Japan's borders were closed for centuries. So while the Industrial Revolution was happening globally, Japan was still in a very kind of rural, rustic environment pre-industry. So when during the Meiji period the borders opened, it was an explosive growth of industry and technology and steam power and all of this. And I think like that definitely kind of resonates with this idea of like it's a very global thing, but Japan had a very kind of like succinct and rapid industry growth in the kind of the early 1900s.
Well, that's why I was I assumed Because I know, Katie, you made the point about the sort of setting not being explained in the village he leaves. I assumed this was a fantasy setting because he leaves this sort of mystical place and then meets the fictitious rise of industry right in time. I assume this is all invented. So this is, obviously this didn't happen, but this is based on relative history then.
I would say so. I would say so. I'd say it's very kind of like based in a nebulous fantasy form of Japan. And as well, like Japan, obviously, kind of Shintoism is heavily the belief of kind of like spirits residing in, very kind of mundane objects. So the idea of there being forest spirits and tree spirits and all of this and animal spirits, like it's very much just kind of like it's bringing them just to life and just supplanting them in this destruction of environment and destruction of forestry.
Into the nitty gritty of all this, but I really liked the way the film introduces the setting through it's Ashitaka as the main character, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, anything kind of vaguely kind of environmental tends to fall, no matter how hard it tries, into like a heroes on this side, villains on this side. And I really like the way that Ashitaka first meets the kind of samurai soldier and gets his point of view, and then goes to the Iron Town and then gets their point of view, and then goes to the forest and gets all their point of view. There's no real villain as such. I know we're going to probably get into that later, but like everyone in it comes from a culture that needs very particular things that just happens to bash off everything else. And I really like the way that upon hundreds of viewings, that they've kind of fleshed that out and they don't make it feel like they're just expositing to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of, that was one thing I noticed as well, is that there's no clear good guy, bad guy dynamic. It's just, because the people who are destroying the environment are also lovely people, and they're trying to help Ashitaka, and they're, all this kind of stuff. And even the woman who runs that village, she's like adopting labs and sex workers, and there's the foresters who really just want the forest to be nice and they, they can be living in it, but then they're kind of horrible people at the same time.
Oh yeah, like as much as San, the princess herself, like as much as you want to kind of root for her standing for the survival of the forest and survival of the spirits, she's a ruthless murderer. Like
yeah,
oh yeah, she's a murdery Batman.
Yeah, like like the characters in this just feel so fundamentally human that you feel compelled. That they're so compelling, that they're so engaging.
Is it weird that I was kind of towards the end, I was kind of more rooting for the polluters just because they were such lovely people?
That's what I was about to say, actually. If this was like a Star Wars setting, Lady Eboshi would be like leading the Rebel Alliance. Because you also, against the backdrop, you don't see the strength of them, but you know that there is, Kev, you can correct me on this, a sort of samurai empire, kind of just a small piece of a much bigger.
Oh, that's just the Japanese empire. Because that's Jigo, the monk, and like he is puppeteering Eboshi into killing the forest spirit. Because the Emperor wants his head. The Emperor believes that the forest spirit's head will make him immortal. So really, there is a bad guy. It's the Emperor. We just never see him.
Well, I mean, in fairness,
yeah, but that's.
In fairness, now the forest spirit himself is kind of a jerk.
I think that's one fascinating part of it, is that the forest is presented as something so fundamentally neutral. Nature doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
And that's something I think, by kind of personifying them as kind of like physical embodiments, they've created these animals that just do not care. Like as you see the forest spirit, it dies and it kills and it revives because that's what nature does.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true.
Is it because he has a? Is it because
he's just look.
Is it because he has a weird like, human face? Is that?
No, well, the face thing was really weird because it's kind of like he has this weird humanoid face, but at the same time it's not, and it keeps changing and shifting. But it's kind of more just his attitude towards things in general. You know, he's kind of like, yeah, I mean, you know, even the fact that he has the power this whole time to kind of put things the way they were, he's like, yeah, I don't feel like it.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, but like Kev says, he's a neutral presence though. Nature has been there forever. Humans have just rocked up on its door.
I think that's it. Like, I think you're trying to rationalize him with
and want a reaction from it. And it's like, I'm safe and walking around the forest.
I think it's more the juxtaposition of like the other forest gods that they're working really hard to kind of try and put things back, to plant new trees, all of this kind of thing. And he's supposed to be their leader, but he's like, yeah, I really don't care.
But that's the thing. He isn't their leader. He just exists. The animals are a culture in and of themselves, separate to what the forest does. They just live there, you know?
Yeah, I think like he's less of a person or less of a being and just more of a sheer force of nature.
Force is a good word. He's like if the Force in Star Wars was a being. It's not that it's good or bad, it just exists. And people just sort of use the space however they. But that's what I like about this film though. You could so easily have the forest spirit be this Tinkerbelly pixie thing that's helpless or mighty or just very one particular thing, but it's a very unknowable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it just does what it does when it wants to, and it doesn't really care about anyone else.
Like a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trees just got a tree.
Yeah. Scorpion's got a score.
Scorpion's got a score. Listen, that's just how it be.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can
What's
get
the
that
Japanese for that's just how it be?
like, I can get that to an extent. It's kind of, when you put it against all the, you know, even the little forest spirits who like pretty much worship this guy, and he doesn't do anything for or against anyone, you know?
I think like he definitely like I think it,
but
it's
like
very much that he feels like a MacGuffin.
Well, I mean that's true, but like I mean if you're going to destroy the forest has got to be like a little Pixar-y thing you can attach emotions to, you know, like I think if you just burn down a tree, it'd just be like, that was a nice tree.
Well, yeah, I think that's it as well, because like they're all going after the forest spirit, like obviously trying to behead him, and he's so neutral and he's so bland and meh that he's not very likable, that you don't feel like, oh no, they can't kill him. You know, it's kind of more about, oh no, but what about all the little forest spirits?
See, that's I think as well. Like it I don't think you're supposed to. Like, as I said, I think he kind of acts more of a MacGuffin, where you're just kind of like, if you're to pick a side, you're to pick between the animal spirits and the people of Irontown. Like they're your protagonists.
Yeah.
Yeah. If a Snorlax falls asleep in the middle of the road, it hasn't done it to annoy you particularly.
No, it has.
But he isn't responsible for the large angry reaction you have for not being able to cycle to that next town.
Cian, are you saying that
he's just doing what he does?
Are you trying to say that a Snorlax is an ancient, omnipotent spirit being?
I mean, it could be.
It has lasers. Anything's possible.
It does shoot lasers out of its eyes. That's fair.
Oh, damn, you got me there. Yeah, that's definitely a god. Okay, actually, let me ask you a question. Kind of,
it responds to a flute.
Cool. Let me actually ask you guys. So, how did you guys watch this? Obviously, we all watched it probably on Netflix because they're all the films are available on Netflix. Thank anime Jesus. But did you guys watch this in English or Japanese?
I did it in English, but I did it with subtitles. So basically, I was watching it, like I only watched it the other night, and so I was in the room, and Austin was also in the room playing video games. So I was like, okay, I'll put it on low, I'll put subtitles on so I can just read it as it's happening.
Because I got all the Ghibli's on DVD like a sap. I have watched both versions, this is for this one in particular. I quite like the English dub because this is my only other fact that Kev doesn't know. Possibly, I think Neil Gaiman actually did the English draft of this film.
Yes.
He
I know he was
did.
involved with it to some
did.
degree.
He wrote, he
So
wrote the English dub
So
script.
it listens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it listens. It feels like a proper, like, original property in that dub. Some of them, like Grave of the Fireflies, you can tell they just translated it, and it's awkward at times. But this is one which got the proper florid rewrite treatment, and I think it's really strong for that.
With this, I would like to springboard off into one of my favorite rabbit holes, which is the Western release of this movie. But actually, first,
Okay.
one little fun tidbit I want to bring up is the name itself, because it's an interesting kind of name, because obviously San is called San and not Mononoke.
Well, they do reference her as Princess Mononoke like once.
See, that's the thing. I done some research on this because I kind of thought it meant like Beast Princess. It kind of translates out to Cursed Princess, like Mononoke-san or Mononoke Hime.
Yeah, it's like
it's only ever used, as I said, once. I think it's only ever said once in the film, and that is when Eboshi is essentially just taunting her.
yeah, and it's kind of like it means like shape-shifting being or something like that.
Just kind of cursed beast princess.
Yeah.
So I just kind of thought that was a little fun fact. I think like the alternative title, at least for the English, whether or not this was the original Japanese title, was supposed to be like The Legend of Ashitaka, and it just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah, well,
That's what I was
kind of-
wondering, because
kind
this
of-
is distributed by Disney, so
Yes,
princesses, like, maybe they were hoping she'd be in that hierarchy.
Well, no, again, like before Disney got the distribution rights, the Japanese film is called Mononoke Hime.
Well, I mean, I think the whole thing with Ashitaka as well is that, yeah, he is the main character, but he kind of feels very, like, especially towards the end, he feels very secondary. He's just there, and this is all happening around him.
Well, I want to, like, I know you've got, like, a wonderful tangent prepared, Kev, but I want to defend Ashitaka on that respect, because I feel like he's got a more interesting main character journey than he's given credit for, because it starts with him being this, like
it's not what I was getting at saying that he's secondary. It's kind of more like he kind of reminds me of, you know, like say Link from Zelda, where he has all this thrown at him. Like he is the protagonist, but he's got this horrible situation thrown at him, and it's like, go fix this.
You know,
but that's what I was gonna say. Sorry, you go, Kev.
No, I was just gonna actually mention that that the Legend of Zelda comparison did tick into my mind, and there's some very odd similarities, like how the franchise is named for somebody who is not the main character, but it's their love interest.
Yeah.
But that's what I was gonna say, though. It's like he's to some degree he's secondary by the end, but also I think it wouldn't work without him, because he's the only character who has made an empathetic connection involved in the conflict. There, it wouldn't work. And B, if he didn't make a connection to Eboshi and is it Rin, the kind of Delphi and San, then they wouldn't touching at the start. Real outsider in this world, trying to put all the pieces together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he is a point of view character, but he's a very effective point of view character that makes enough.
But that's what I mean. It's a point of view character. Yeah, he's not just like the Link comparison. He's not just there to watch the world and now and again do like an Owen Wilson wow. He actually affects change in the environment, to use that wording correctly.
But I mean,
you know?
what does Link do for Hyrule?
Well, I mean, he doesn't talk.
No, but you don't have to talk to make change.
Yeah, but I like as much as we talk about this in terms of the video game, as much as like your decisions playing as Link, the decisions aren't made for Link. The decisions are made for Link. Link doesn't decide anything independently of himself. Whereas
that's
like,
what I mean by affecting change. Yeah.
Like while, because like in this movie, Ashitaka makes decisions and comes to his own conclusions, while the movie is presented for you to make your own conclusions. But like in the narrative,
That's a fair point. Yeah.
he made decisions and he chose his side and he made his task.
Yeah, and he never like threw anyone else under the bus to do it. He tries to save as many people as possible. Like,
Yeah, that's fair. You know, his whole thing is just like, why are you fighting?
I mean, me and Kev, like we're both huge fans of the Fire Emblem Three Houses thing. And when you're forced to make a decision, those are the two houses that are going under the bus. Like Ashitaka would have none of that. He'd have saved all of them. Like.
He tried his hardest.
You know what?
But Kev, I think you're about to tell us a big elaborate story, were you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Katie. Do you have another thing to say before I get back on my bullshit?
Oh no, yeah, no. I was just gonna say the real unsung hero of that movie is Yakul.
Oh man, bless you, Cole. Yeah, he's got it. What a legend. Bless that red deer. Sweet boy. Try so hard.
Oh yeah, I forgot. It's and actually, I know again we're postponing Kev's rant, but the English voice cast in this is top notch in the dub. There's some fantastic casting there. Like,
yeah. So okay, well, I think I'll put a pin in that because as mentioned earlier, we're gonna get into the Western distribution of this because I think this is pretty kind of fascinating. So as I mentioned up top, you got to remember that this is the late 90s, so anime was not really coming over to the West unless it was very particular or was being shilled to art house movies. Things were changing with the rise in popularity of Akira and the proliferation of VHS tapes. Hey guys, remember VHS tapes? Anime.
Oh man, pausing an image and watching it go up and down like its life depends on it.
Oh bless it.
Rewinding with a pencil.
But Disney decided to put a stake in this and say, you know what? We know that there's cult success in some of these movies. We want to bring them over here, give them an English voice cast, and release them. And now you got to think from Disney's perspective, they're getting My Neighbor Totoro, they're getting Castle in the Sky, they're getting Kiki's Delivery Service, all these really fun family movies, right? Disney acquires the rights in about 1996. While Miyazaki is producing Princess Mononoke. So, Disney didn't quite get what they were expecting. But, they were under contract. Disney, released it. I think they subbed it down to Miramax instead of the Disney brand. And Miramax put it down to one of their subcommittees. But Disney released it. I think they released it mostly in kind of art house. They didn't give it a wide distribution, but they did give it a fairly all-star English voice cast, which is even just kind of rare outside of Ghibli movies. With the likes of Minnie Driver as Lady Eboshi, Billy Bob Thornton as Jigo, Keith David as Otako, the boar spirit near the end, John DiMaggio as Gonza, Eboshi's guard, Gillian Anderson as Moro, San's wolf mother, Claire Danes as San, and Billy Crudup as Ashitaka. So I'm not personally a huge fan of some of the performances, because sometimes I feel like actual actors aren't great voice actors. It's still it's very significant that these big names were being attached to this niche Japanese project at the time.
Keith David can do no wrong.
Keith David can do no wrong.
Oh, put Keith David in anything and I'll at least give it a chance.
So, as mentioned up top as well, Neil Gaiman, who again, you got to remember at this point, Neil Gaiman, not a household name at this point. He hadn't started Sandman. He hadn't written Stardust. He hadn't written American Gods. Neil Gaiman at the point was just the guy that wrote a weird book with Terry Pratchett. Again, we're talking late 90s. So Neil Gaiman, just an up and coming fantasy writer. They just are yeah, you can write this script. That's fine. Go right ahead. But here's where one of my favorite little tangents comes down. Because as I said, Disney, because the mature content pushed down to Miramax, guess who ran Miramax at the time? And here we bring in human garbage pile Harvey Weinstein.
Oh.
Bum, bum, bum.
So, Weinstein being the true piece of trash he is, saw this, was like, this is weird. If I'm releasing this, I'm cutting 30 minutes out of it. And when you have someone like a pighead like Weinstein and just this iron will of Miyazaki.
So wait, hang on a minute, because the one I watched was over 2 hours long. How long is this movie?
Oh no, it's about 2 hours. Because it released it as it was.
Okay.
Because when Harvey Weinstein demanded that the film be cut, word got to Miyazaki. One of Miyazaki's producers allegedly sent Harvey Weinstein in the mail a katana sword with a note literally reading "no cuts."
That is so badass.
And one of my favorite quotes was that when Weinstein got this, he went off on one of his like baby in a diaper tantrums, and is allegedly quoted to saying about Hayao Miyazaki, he will never work in this industry again. Which 20 years on is the funniest goddamn thing I've ever heard.
Oh,
my god, are we actually going to start like a segment on your show where Weinstein tries to stop Japanese directors from doing things in their own movies?
You know,
up to two at least.
I think, you know, Bong Joon-ho. God bless. Like, I love that story so much. Okay. I don't know if did you hear about Harvey Weinstein talking to Bong Joon-ho, Katie?
No.
Okay. We're sidebarring this because this is one of the funniest goddamn things I've ever heard. You know Snowpiercer?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, Snowpiercer, released and developed, distributed by Miramax. And again, Weinstein getting his fingers all over it. Wanted, again, you know, so I was like, what's this weird Korean thing? I don't like it. Cutting like 20 minutes out of it. And there's one scene in Snowpiercer, which is kind of out of blue, is one of the bad guys like guts a fish in front of people as like a power move. It's kind of odd, but it's there. And Weinstein very went into a fit. Is like, what's this weird fish thing? I hate it. We're cutting it. And Bong Joon-ho, when Weinstein said to him, was like, we're cutting this out of the movie, Bong was like, it means a lot to me. My father was a fishmonger, and this is my tribute to him. And Weinstein was like, oh, okay, I guess namaste, my brother. I guess, you know, family means everything. We keep this. 10 years later, Bong Joon was like, no, I just wanted the fish thing in it.
You're not messing with my movie.
No, like I just wanted it.
Those two stories side by side are like in a video game where you've got like the charm or the renegade option. Lie about your father, sword.
Send
Make your
katana
choice.
in the mail.
You don't really get the benefit in either case, though, because you don't get to see his face when he finds it.
Well, yeah, but like, what about, you know, okay, being on the receiving end of that, you get a cool sword.
I was going to say, that would be handy for him trying to get out of jail, wouldn't it? Not that he should.
Oh, no.
I'm not giving him advice.
No.
He can stay there.
No.
He can
too soon, Cian, too soon.
But yeah, it's just that, like, considering, you know, we're at a point where anime movies are being to a point where they're being released as almost as soon as they're released in Japan in the West, at least limited. It's just really fascinating to look back, and this was the esoteric nonsense they had to go through to get.
Well, this is what I was going to ask, because even compared to other Ghibli movies, this is dark, as Katie mentioned before we started recording. Not Firefly dark, but like
definitely.
still...
Like, in terms of like Miyazaki's work, definitely. And I think it's certain, like, it's difficult for me to like kind of talk about preferences in terms of him. All of his movies mean something to me, but I think I will go on record as saying that I think this is his most ambitious project.
Oh, easily. It feels like a 4-hour story that got cut down in the most efficient way possible. There's so much more world to look for, you know?
there's a lot of world that's not explored or explained, and it feels like, you know, if they'd done it a bit longer or as a series or something, that it could have been more fleshed out.
Like, I got that. I know we're not reviewing it this week, but what the first Ghibli movie, Nausicaa, I struggled with that a bit because it felt like that was based on like an ongoing manga series, and that was one where it felt like there was too much world to explain in a movie, but they tried their best. Mononoke feels like they got it down properly, and it didn't feel like you were being given too much information. And it had a nice flow and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this was one solid tight project from start to finish that almost feels like it was exactly how the director imagined.
And
See, now I felt the opposite of it. Now, not that it wasn't good, but just I felt that there was a lot of, so like when I was in college, we used to do this thing called show don't tell. And it's basically if you're telling people about something, some kind of context, you show them rather than just tell. And I feel like there was a lot of backstory that was kind of just told, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the only bit I notice it generally is when the boars turn up and they kind of have to explain their backstory. But before that, I felt like all the exposition either was done physically, like, you know, Ashitaka hanging out with the women and doing the kind of steam things and that kind of stuff, or it came from character. I think for the most part, it does a fairly good job.
Even just things like San's backstory is kind of, it's very throwaway. It's done in about 5 seconds, you know? It's like, okay, why and how is she living with wolves? And the wolf just kind of goes, oh yeah, I caught her parents being, you know, assholes, so I kicked them out and they left her behind. And I'm like, okay, that's the start of a story. Where's the rest of it?
We don't have time. Keep moving. We've an environment to save.
Yeah, we don't have the time. She lives with us. That's all you need to know.
Now, I know that it's not glowing praise. It's never glowing praise to say this about a movie, but I definitely think it's a movie that benefits deeply from multiple watches. It's not necessity, but I think like me and Cian probably are speaking so highly of it because we've seen it several times over. So we've had time to kind of like re-examine it and point out like, oh, I missed this the first time, that explains that. So I think like I as I said, I don't want to say that you should watch a movie twice because like if you have to watch a movie twice to get it, it's not a great movie. But I think it would definitely benefit to watch it a couple of times if you didn't quite get it. Well, okay, actually, let me pose this more as a question. Would you watch this movie again?
To be honest, probably not. And it's purely just it's probably not purely just because, but like I went into this kind of coming from a place of, you know, Ponyo and Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, and I was like, oh, this is going to be another nice, fun, you know, family friendly kind of thing. And 15 minutes into it, I was like, he just beheaded a guy with an arrow. So
I've been trying to bring up the violence. Yeah. The arms stuck to the tree.
It starts out the same way as those others do, you know, like he's a nice young boy living in an idyllic countryside rural village, and you know, okay, yeah, he gets attacked by a demon, but there's nothing kind of noteworthy about it other than the fact that, right, there's a demon. And then as soon as he leaves the village, it's like all hell breaks loose and there's blood everywhere and like people are losing limbs, and it was one of those things that it kind of shocked me because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, I definitely think like I definitely think it's one that's I definitely think it's designed to shock you, to make it clear to you this is not a movie that's messing around. The points of this movie are poignant and important. And here is the stark reality of it. I like when I watched it this time, I definitely read it that the curse that got put onto him was, for lack of a better comparison, kind of Hulk-ish. No, like it's like
no, it is.
And like that's kind of clear with the two boars that get cursed as well. It's this overcoming of rage that clouds judgment and makes you terribly powerful. Like when he's escaping the village, he's, you know, he's just throwing whole logs, and he lifts the gate that they say has to be lifted by 10 men with one arm.
And he's doing all of this while he's been like shot completely through the chest.
Yeah, like it is showing that like while like power has a cost, and that cost is clouding judgment.
But that's what I like about this film, though, because all of the groups should reasonably be able to get along together. But the more passionate they get, it's almost like those blinkers on horses. The less they
Yeah.
see, and Ashitaka starts in that place because he's killed a thing, and now he is looking at this world he doesn't understand and dealing out justice as he sees it. And the more and more people he meets, the more he appreciates that there are lots and lots of different viewpoints. And San is on that journey too. So I like the fact that there is a collective moving all the characters towards openness and understanding without being heavy-handed about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I kind of like the symbolism for it as well, is that, like you said, like the more passionate people become about their side of things, the more blinded they become. And I quite liked the symbolism in that the most stubborn person in the entire movie, who's the leader of the Boers, is literally blind.
That's true, actually. That's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I didn't think about that. That's real good, yeah.
Yeah, and like their whole thing is that they know they're going to die, but they're just so in on this cause that, like, you know, they want to do it before they disappear. And it's just like, you feel so bad for everyone. There's no one who's like, that guy, that jerk. Yeah, him. I can't wait till he like falls in the lava. That kind of thing.
Just concerning the Boers, I have a question that's probably going to sound like such a stupid noob question, right? How did they apply war paint? They are covered in war paint. How did they do that?
Cartoon physics.
A wizard did it.
Maybe they it's just like gingerly against their tusks. That's the best I can imagine. I think, okay, if I had to kind of level like one big criticism against it, and I don't want to get mild spoilers if to those listening, this is like it's the end. I felt it had almost too much of a happy ending.
Do you think it was happy?
Everybody lived.
Well, I mean, well, not everybody, but I mean, to me, the ending was very much so that obviously the whole movie is them. They can't see past their own side of things, their own wants, their own needs. And the ending of it seemed very much like we haven't learned any lessons, because I mean, like the people in Irontown, obviously Irontown, you know, being what it is, gets consumed by the forest again, whatever. But everybody in Irontown is like, okay, we're going to build again. You know,
I didn't read that so much as we're going to build Irontown again. I think it's just that we're going to build civilization again. That was my kind of interpretation.
I don't know. Like to me, it just seemed like we're going to start again. And even with San, you know, the whole thing with Ashitaka and San is like he's willing to give up, you know, what he knows is life to be with her. And at the end of the movie, she's kind of like, I can't see past myself. So he says, okay, well then you go live in the woods.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be a contrarian for the sake of it, but my kind of read on that was that their conflict had brought them just enough to the point of absolute destruction as it could reasonably be. And they were offered a slight chance at redemption, but with it very clear that if they do this again, this will happen again. To bring in like Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like, why do you want to save the universe? Because I'm one of the assholes that lives in it. Like they've demonstrated that this is what happens when we just completely like just take each other for granted and our world for granted. And every character is offered a chance at redemption, but not
everyone
forgiveness.
takes it.
If you know what I mean. Like, you know, it's just.
I think I'm just getting hung up on Jigen or Jigo. Just kind of like seems like, that didn't work out. Live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like he's not even like he hasn't learned anything from that experience. Like he's just like, oh, maybe next time I should just do it all myself.
That's the thing. I think there's some characters where I feel like they didn't learn a lesson and stakes kind of need to be upheld.
Yeah, it's kind of like everybody just goes back to doing what they were already doing, even though they see the consequences.
Yeah, like I think that's like my
true
caveat, I think.
But this is my question. How do you have the whole film them being complex and sympathetic and then also have the narrative punish them? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
If a
it's
narrative
not, no,
punishes them,
it's not necessarily
it's-
punish them, but at least have them see why their actions were wrong in the first place.
It feels like there's
I
not
suppose.
like as much destruction as is wrought at the end of the movie. When all is said and done, at least for some characters, again, I think I'm focusing on Jigo a lot. It doesn't feel like there's any consequences.
Yeah.
No, but Jigo's too charming. He's the Del Boy of the movie. I would say that, like, your points are correct, but there's also the fact that it's an environmental movie, and environmental movies need to send you out there with hope.
Yeah, I think
Because if you
as
don't
I
have
said,
hope, you won't affect change. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Hmm.
I suppose yeah. I get the point that it's probably a message for you as opposed to for the characters. I get that.
Yeah. Like, there was a Doctor Who episode last year that was specifically about global warming, and it ended on a Debbie Downer ending, and it just didn't work. You just come away going, "Oh, forget you! I do my recycling.
That's
What?
fair.
What's
but
this?
I mean,
You know?"
I feel like there are ways that they could have handled the ending in that they still get the message across, and lessons are learned at the same time.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I think at this point it is like I am nitpicking. I genuinely like this. As I said, this is probably my only critique I have against this. I still adore this movie to hell and back.
Yeah, like it's not my favorite Ghibli movie, but at the same time, I didn't hate it.
That's fair. If you okay, just for contrast, what would be your favorite Ghibli movie, Katie?
Probably Ponyo. I don't know. There's just something about that little fish girl.
Oh, this movie ain't Ponyo.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. Well, that's what I was saying is that I came into it from that. All the nice. Like, I think that the darkest it ever got was probably Spirited Away or Hell's Moving Castle, and even in that, they're quite lighthearted. It's more kind of the war going on in the background, and so I came into it from that perspective. So I wasn't really expecting it to be as as gory and as dark as it actually was.
Yeah, Miyazaki has
for me, the win. Yeah.
Sorry, Miyazaki has a deft hand at being able to write these terribly dramatic parts, but they're all subtext.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's The Rises is still my favorite, but it really just depends on my mood. I do love how they get this like epic scale down, and very rare is it in a movie. I feel protective of every single character, especially like you never feel bad for the orcs or the stormtroopers or anything like that. So I think that what they pulled off here is an incredible achievement of storytelling, even before you get to the animation aspects of it.
Oh, that's I don't think we talked enough about just how truly gorgeous this movie is.
Yeah. The animation is just beautiful.
Another kind of just fun fact about the production was that allegedly no frame of this movie didn't go forward without Miyazaki's express permission. He oversaw
I believe it.
everything, and I think there was a report saying that he redrew 18,000 frames. Not necessarily. Apparently, he had to check 18,000 frames and get his staff to redraft them essentially. But it was.
Oh my god!
It was an express labor from him for perfection.
If I had to check every microsecond of a script I was writing 18,000 times or whatever, I'm not surprised it would turn out as good as this. That is a high level of involvement.
Yeah, that is the expression of a man that chain smokes and say that anime was a mistake.
That is literally your art is your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. To circle back to He Who Shall Not Be Named, I wonder how many 1,000 frames a half an hour movie getting cut would be to him at the other side of it. He's like, I checked those 35,000 frames manually. I'm not cutting this.
Literally, yeah. And I think I also truly have to give a massive shout out as well to the composer, Joe Hisaishi, who is also the composer of pretty much every other Ghibli movie. Just an incredible composer. Just truly gorgeous pieces of music.
Yeah, I watched a YouTube thing on that composer recently, and he's got like an amazing way of taking these like really weird, unusual melodies and making them sound really, really pretty. It's hard to make music sound pretty, especially in a movie like, but he's found a way.
Yeah, like he is part of the reason why Ghibli is so prolific as it is, because it has like that very Ghibli sound as well as that Ghibli look, and it's all this one kind of neat package.
Yeah, it's Ghibli music. It's like even now, I can still remember like the Totoro theme and that kind of stuff. It's earwormy, but not intentionally. Do you know what I mean? It's just very nice and breezy, and it stays with you. You know?
Oh yeah, like if I have to like kind of just de-stress, the Spirited Away soundtrack is just an ease off my mind.
Mm. The lovely guitars and like the wind rises, or like just the sort of summer holiday sounds of Totoro. Like it's really it's got a lot of personality. Like
Yeah, no, truly just beautiful stuff. Well, I think that's about it, guys. As far as I can say, no, truly, this has been a blast. I'm delighted with the discussions we had. Do either of you have anything you would like to add before we go?
over to you, Katie.
Me.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Just still working away with my own show, doing it for the Exposure. That's out every Thursday, and we are doing our last episode before Christmas next week, and then we are going to be taking a substantial break and reconfiguring the show when we come back.
You mean 3 weeks ago? On the stairs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Just cut that part.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. My brain doesn't work anymore these days. No, nothing is new with me. Nothing is new. Nothing.
Okay. If you've listened for this long, we're just gonna peel back the curtain. It's early December.
It's early December. Yes,
we
and apparently I have no chill.
And you've just lost Whamageddon again.
Yeah. Yeah, just cut that. It's fine.
Well, Cian, what have you got down the pipeline in this wonderful, definitely January?
Well, in this definitely January, I may or may not be reviewing Star Trek Discovery on Geek Ireland, because I don't know how long the series is going to be. If it's still going, I'll be reviewing it on Geek Ireland.
In January.
And you can find, in January, the Mandalorian in weeks past. Yeah.
But you can definitely find all the reviews you have done on Geek Ireland up to now.
If it's a TV show review, it's probably mine. So you can find all my stuff there. I'm also hoping to get the Game Corner back in January as well, but you will know better than me if I succeeded it by the time this airs.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, if you're listening to this, definitely keep an eye on the feeds for doing it for the Exposure and for the Game Corner. And for all the other shows, you can find all three of us usually on Nerd to Know basis. You can find me playing Dungeons & Dragons with some friends of mine over on twitch.tv/ConnorRain. It's truly a blast on that. And we will see you all next time for another anime crash course.
In February.
Bye-bye. In February. Definitely February. Bye-bye.
My vote's Grave of the Fireflies. Bye.
Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.